Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. This is Friday, March 27th, and this is our daily update on the spread of the coronavirus outbreak here in Westchester County. We hear each day, usually in the 11 o'clock hour, from Governor Andrew Cuomo, who provides overall statistics and an outline of state activities along these lines. And we often hear from the Washington, D.C. Somewhere later in the afternoon, but we want to at least give you the local perspective of what's happening here in Westchester County as of today. We have become very numbers-oriented in this, so we'll deal with the numbers right up front so you have an idea of what's happening overall. The governor's announcement this morning indicated that we now see that there are overall 7,187 positive cases of coronavirus in Westchester County. That exceeds any other jurisdiction in New York State except for New York City, but it is much larger than counties that are larger than us. Nassau County, for example, has 4,600 cases, and Suffolk a little less than that. What I think is most important to note is that Westchester also exceeds in the number of testing. We have tested 29,515 people in Westchester County, and that is not only the largest outside of New York City within the state, but per capita, it's the largest, not just in the state, but in the nation as a jurisdiction. Westchester County has the largest percentage of our population that has been tested for coronavirus. In identifying that we have 7,187 cases, we will also note that now we're seeing that the number of cases by jurisdiction really does track the population. And what that tells us is that the spread of coronavirus is now evenly spread out across the county. When it originally appeared a couple of weeks ago, there was a concentration in one part of the county, but now what we're seeing is that concentration is no different based on population. The numbers of the communities right now are as follows. Yonkers has the most number of cases now in Westchester County at 301 cases, and we keep in mind that Yonkers' population in the vicinity of 200,000 represents about a quarter of the population of Westchester County. So they are now with 301 cases. Behind them is New Rochelle, which was the original source of the greatest number of cases. They are now at 284, and they are behind that. The town of Greenburgh has 173 cases, and that's divided jurisdictionally by 81 cases that are tracked in the unincorporated part of Greenburgh. That's where the Greenburgh town government provides direct services, emergency first responder services, and the 6 villages that comprise, in essence, half of the town of Greenburgh have generated 92 cases. So in the aggregate, Greenburgh is at 173 cases. And those 3 communities, Yonkers, New Rochelle, and Greenburgh, are the 3 largest population bases in Westchester County. So now we're seeing that is the case. If you went to the other end of the spectrum, the smallest municipality, that's organized municipality in the county, is the village of Buchanan, which has no cases of coronavirus. The next 2 smallest jurisdictions in population are North Salem and Pound Ridge, and they have respectively 3 cases and 2 cases each. So the message behind knowing the numbers is not just to hear numbers as if this was a reporting of the NBA standings, but to understand what does it mean in substance. And what it means is that the more you test, the more you will find cases. The more you test broadly, you will find a broad distribution of cases. And when the governor talks about New York's cases vis-a-vis the United States, you will see that New York is well ahead of most other states, including states that are ahead of us in population and behind us in population, with a small differentiation and a big drop of cases. And we do believe that represents that our area, Westchester County, and New York State in general, have tested more to find the COVID virus. We found a certain percentage of it present in the population, evenly distributed based on population. Continuing the numbers down, the next 2 largest communities in Westchester County, the city of Mount Vernon is listed as having 136 cases, and the city of White Plains has 98 cases. Portchester follows next with 82 cases. Portchester may not have as large a population in the range of 35, we estimate 35 to 40,000 people, so they're that much smaller than White Plains and Mount Vernon would be. They're both in the 60,000 range, but Portchester is a densely populated community, arguably only less dense populated than the city of Mount Vernon, which is the most densely populated community. So Portchester at 82. Ossining Village is at 81, and that is a significant number. In the town of Eastchester, we have the same situation as we do in Greenburgh. There's an unincorporated section of Eastchester, which is the larger portion of the town, and they have 55 cases. the two villages that are also part of the town of Eastchester, the village of Bronxville with 16 and the village of Tuckahoe with 9 cases, they add up to 25 cases. And so when you take Eastchester overall between unincorporated and both communities, they come in at 80 cases. The town of Yorktown has 55 cases, and that's a significant jump from where it was a day ago. And then in the center of the county, the town of Mount Pleasant has 49 cases in the unincorporated section of Mount Pleasant. There are 24 additional cases in the village of Sleepy Hollow, which falls within the town, and 19 cases in the village of Pleasantville, which falls within the town. And when you aggregate those numbers together, you get 92 cases. The village of Briarcliff Manor has 9 cases, and Briarcliff Manor straddles the border between the town of Ardsley and the town of Mount Pleasant. We don't quite know how to allocate the numbers, but it gives you an idea that when we look at the numbers, and there's a full list of all the municipal numbers that we have, we released them to the press this afternoon, that this is a significant across-the-board spread all across Westchester County. And that should both concern us, but also tell us that this is not about any one community. This is about all of our communities and all of our demographic groups that we have to deal with. The numbers that are both discouraging and encouraging at the same time. We have the total number of residents that are currently hospitalized in Westchester County, residents, or 73 Westchester residents are hospitalized right now for the coronavirus. That represents about 1% of the total cases, maybe a shade more than 1%. 7,100 cases, 73 people hospitalized. Of those that are hospitalized as well, there's a cumulative where we've had up to 91 people, and that means some have been released and were deemed healthy enough to be released to go back out. So the story is that not everybody that is hospitalized winds up in long-term hospitalization. We do have to report that there have been 10 deaths in Westchester County, and those 10 deaths obviously are 10 too many, but they represent well less than 1% of the population. If these percentages were to continue going forward, that is a manageable number of hospitalizations within the county, but we are working under the belief that this contagion has yet to peak. And the governor has said earlier today, I assume there's some additional statistics that he has available to him, which we wouldn't see at our level of government, that the peak of this may still be a couple of weeks away. So if we're growing in the number of cases as fast as we are, we're up to 7,000 cases now from numbers that were much smaller than that just a day or two ago, that will continue to grow. And we will continue to push against what will be the total number of hospital beds available in Westchester County. As I've reported previously, there are 3,000 hospital beds in Westchester County, 160 ICU beds. At the current percentage, we're fine, but the current percentage may not hold as cases increase. And so we're monitoring all of these things. We're certainly going to be upfront on all of these issues for all of you so that you can be well versed on where we are with the actual numbers of this. What's also important to note is the amount of testing that is going on individually. There were, over the course of the last 24 hours, 3,227 tests for coronavirus in Westchester County. Now, the results haven't come back on all of those tests, so we don't know how that will or won't add to our totals. But there are many people who are waiting to be tested, great frustration when you can't easily get a test, some who haven't been put in the queue line yet, some who have been tested but haven't heard their results yet. But that testing number is well beyond what any other jurisdiction is doing proportionately compared to New York City and in absolute numbers compared to other counties. And it's important to note that everybody who needs to be tested on some priority basis is waiting to be tested. We're not testing randomly. We're not trying to test people that are asymptomatic. We're not trying to test people within a particular jurisdiction to make any kind of point. These are people that have signed up for tests because their doctors have authorized it. Perhaps they're a first responder, or they're in a critical job, a healthcare worker job, or perhaps a job that interacts with people in a public setting. And all of these things are very important. Excuse me. I didn't intend to display the proper way to cough, but in any event, the overall situation in New York State is concerning. There have been 519 deaths in the state of New York. The fact that there are 10 deaths alone in Westchester County is not encouraging because we're not playing a game of statistics here. But in general terms, Westchester County is 1/20th in population of the state of New York. So we are tracking at a reasonable level below what a percentage would be. We just hope that we don't have any more deaths to report, but unfortunately we know we will. A few other points that we want to make today. I don't want to carry on unnecessarily, and it's really not my place to lecture beyond a certain point. I've shared my thoughts over the course of the week, and we'll continue to do this during the weekdays. An issue that has nothing to do with coronavirus that deserves to be mentioned right now. If we did not have the coronavirus issue, we would be talking about Census 2020. The fact that as of April 1st, we begin the process of counting every man, woman, and child in the United States of America. It's an important task. It helps us understand exactly where we are in terms of our population. It helps us compete for funding when funding is allocated based on population. And it helps us in terms of representation for legislative bodies where there's an equal number of people per district. And if you undercount yourself, you get that much proportionate less representation in the county, the state, and the federal legislative bodies. So we encourage you, if you haven't already, look for your email or for your mail, which will give you a chance to file online. That filing period exists through the month of March, sort of a pre-registration and a pre-filing for census. There's 9 simple questions. They're very easy to fill out. It can be provided in different languages if you're more fluent in a native language. But for those of us who get it, fill it out, get on record. I think we're already pacing ahead of what we thought we would so far. But since people are being quarantined, people are working from home, it is really not a very difficult task to do it. Look for that. File online if you can. Right after April 1st, for those people who haven't filed online, you will get a mail questionnaire for you to fill out, and you can fill it out at home and mail it, and that too will cover us long before we get to the point of any door-to-door contact. That will obviously be dependent, the door-to-door contact, on what happens with the contagion where we are at that point in time. Our hope right now, as we return to the issues that relate to coronavirus, is that at the county level of government, we are making the most intelligent decisions we can make. We have kept open our parks and facilities across the county, 55 parks around the county that include golf courses, those that are open. There are some seasonal facilities. There are public pools, there are public beaches. They are closed as they normally would be this time of year for normal swimming. You can walk along the beaches, and the pools themselves are all shut down. You might be able to walk along the general grounds of the park, but not onto the pools themselves. And of course, Playland Amusement Park has an open boardwalk, although the park itself is not open for any use. All of those facilities, all of our parks, our pools, our beaches, and the amusement park that we have are subject to the governor's authority. And as it stands now, we are still operating within our authority to keep our parks open for general, non-close quarters recreation. So you can bicycle on the Bronxville Parkway pathway, not on the parkway, but on the pathway on the north and south trailway that's a little further west in the county, starts down in the Hastings-Greenburg area and goes all the way north to the Putnam borderline. We invite people to use that as a means to get proper exercise. But it is becoming increasingly difficult to ensure that there is social distancing in these parks. Now, I am serious about this. To the extent that anybody is watching this, you must maintain social distances when you go to our parks. If you fail to do that, we will be forced to shut those facilities. We do not want to shut Kensico Dam Plaza. It's a beautiful facility to go and walk around, but you must have social distancing. You cannot ignore what is a practical reality here. The reason why the restaurants and the bars and the barbershops and the beauty parlors were shut down was because they are naturally close quarter circumstances with lots of people, and you could spread the virus. So the parks are not necessarily in close quarters, but you defeat the purpose of it if you're there in large clusters of people. And I really don't want to have to shut the parks down. It's not my wish to do that. Our Parks Department people are out there trying to encourage it. We have signage up. We appeal to your intellect. We appeal to your better angels. When you use these parks for the purpose that they were meant, that's why they remain open, you must show a certain amount of discipline and social distancing. If you're there with a significant other and you're walking together and you're already in each other's world every day, that's one thing. But when you're there with a group of friends and you're not of normal, close tightness, it is reckless to continue to have that type of situation. So I encourage you, please, use common sense. We will make decisions about whether or not we intend to open those parks that are seasonal. However, we will have to go through the State Department of Health and the governor's office in order to effectuate any opening. Westchester County Center, we announced earlier this week, has been turned over to the state for the purposes of creating additional hospital beds. I mentioned we have 3,000 beds already in Westchester County. There's an effort made by the governor to mandate as many as another 1,500 or so beds come out of those existing properties, and that's a statewide requirement, not just a Westchester requirement. And Westchester County Center is intended to be fitted for additional beds. We saw the governor's press conference this morning where he talked about bringing some of these hospital facilities online beginning the end of this month into next month, meaning basically next week or the week after. We're hopeful that the county center will be put into that situation as soon as possible, and it will help us as much as we can. We have identified for our team a task of identifying 5 additional sites for hospital purposes, 5 additional sites that could be used for testing, and 5 additional sites that involve rooms that could be used for whatever purpose those rooms might be best used in dealing with patients. And in each of those cases, our Director of Real Estate, Gary Friedman, has been very diligent in surveying all the possibilities around Westchester County. Many people have called us about many of the same places over and over again. We have looked at United Hospital. It is not suitable for occupancy at this stage of the game. The structural problems in that location are too severe for us to reoccupy United Hospital. We're well aware of Arrowwood Conference Center, which closed 2 months ago, is still in workable condition. College of New Rochelle, which closed a little earlier in the semester and is available potentially, but there are private owners of those facilities, and we cannot just commandeer them from our level of government, but we try to make them available. If the state makes the decision that we need additional hospital space, additional testing space, we're prepared with that. We have informed the state that we have certain places in Westchester County that can be used for additional mobile testing sites, most notably Playland parking lot in Rye, the FDR parking lot in Yorktown are possibilities. There are private sector parking lots that might fill the bill as well. We are working in harmony with the state government to do that which is possible to make it available for all of these facilities to come to pass. We have long since mentioned 4 or 5 different issues. I'll repeat them very quickly. Our economic development team is researching loans and grants program. There'll be some online programs about that this week coming up. If you go to our website, westchestergov.com, you'll find all the other information you need, the Westchester Catalyst information. If you want to donate or sell a PPE, personal protective equipment, we have an email, icanhelp@westchestergov.com. We have our 211 hotline with the United Way. There's a New York State hotline for testing results, testing requests, 888-364-3065. Hopefully you've spoken to your family doctor at that point. That's important. We also have an email available to answer your questions, COVID-19 FAQ @westchestergov.com. Those responses can come in English or in Spanish. And we have made the request for nurses, doctors, and other healthcare professionals to come forward. We're very happy with the response so far. Quite a few nurses, doctors, and others, and they're being deployed by our County Department of Health in ways that will help us fight this effort. If you want to respond to this request, LAJC@westchestergov.com. Lindsay Jackson is the coordinator for this issue. We're going to go to questions in just a second. I do want to highlight that we have Facebook Live posts. You'll find them, if you're a Facebook viewer, on Westchester County Government Facebook page. You can link on to any of our Facebook Live interviews. We've been doing them each day on different topics. We'll continue one over the weekend we have with Peter DeLucia, who's our Assistant Commissioner of the Department of Health, on things that you can do to sanitize your home and hand-washing techniques. The one that we filmed today was with Mayor Noam Bramson to talk about New Rochelle, which was the original place that was spotlighted as having the highest concentration of cases, even though they are now not the area with the highest number of cases in the county. And we've had other ones earlier this week with Sean DeNegris, professional firefighter, with Bridget Gibbons on economic development issues, Michael Orth, our Commissioner of Mental Health. But do look for those Facebook Live spots. They vary in length, but hopefully they provide some interesting information which you can find. And we welcome any of your questions or comments through the normal mechanisms. Go onto our website, westchestergov.com, and we'll go from there. So we'll go to questions. As I've mentioned before, we are operating this press conference remotely. We would normally be in our media room, and we would ask all the members of the press to come in with their cameras and their notepads, but we didn't think really that was fair to the working press. I know it seems hard to believe that an elected official would care about the working press, but we do, and we want them to be safe. We want them to be with their families and not necessarily out here potentially picking up the virus. So we're happy to answer as many questions as we can. They're being sent in by email to Catherine Chaffee, our Director of Communications, who will feed me the questions off camera, and we'll try to answer them now. Catherine?
Okay, first question comes from Marcus Solis from WABC. How much of a concern is it that people are increasingly ignoring the stay-home order as the weather gets nicer? Is there a plan for this to be enforced in some way?
Well, I think what we're trying to do is offer a few options through our county recreation department where if you are going to leave your house, you can get some external exercise without trying to mix into normal settings in which you would run into large quantities of people and potentially spread the virus. I can imagine staying at home every day is a difficult thing to do, and there's only so much of these at-home projects that you can do. But we also recognize that we are not yet under a total shutdown order. I don't know if that'll come or not. Different states are doing different things, different jurisdictions are. As you know from Governor Cuomo's press conference, it is his executive orders that will drive what happens across the state of New York. And those who are mayors and county executives won't be doing each of us doing our own thing. But I think the enforcement is intended to be light at this point. We do not want to try to engender any particular opposition. We're all on the same side. We try to gently remind people to the greatest extent possible, stay home. Certainly work from home if you can. And then if you're out to get some exercise, go out in the right parameter. Get on your bike and bicycle, take a walk. But don't cluster in common areas. And if we have to enforce it more rigorously, we will. But we are not at that point at this stage of the game. If, in fact, we see the peak contagion coming in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I think what will happen in real time will shake us. I know I was shaken by watching the stories of what was happening in Italy and the death toll one weekend ago of 1,000 people in one weekend in a country that's 1/5 the size of the United States. If we followed that percentage of deaths, that would be like 5,000 deaths, civilian deaths, in a single weekend in the United States. And that should shock anybody into sensible behavior. It should, at least. As I've said a number of times when I've had the microphone, I think we're reasonable people, but we are independent. We pride our individualism in the United States of America. We are a different people than you will find the residents of a totalitarian country who follow rules that are set down under very strict ways of living their lives. But I also think we are an intelligent country, and we're individuals who do pragmatic things to protect our lives. And that is really what comes down to this. So we are enforcing it lightly, meaning if we see things that are inappropriate social distancing, our police force will inform people, give a warning, if you will, or give an advisory, but we're not yet at the point where we're using any type of heavy techniques to force people to not do this. As the contagion grows, I think it'll become self-explanatory. And should we get the worst of it, only a fool wouldn't follow intelligent, natural directions of their behavior.
Okay. Similar topic. This question comes from Mark Lombriello. They're hearing Saxon Woods and other golf courses have people going out with more than one passenger in the carts. Is the county doing anything to ensure that social distancing measures are being enforced at the parks?
Well, we've talked to our Parks Commissioner, Kathy O'Connor. We've emphasized to her and to all of her people that it's essential that the people who are on staff at these parks do everything they can to enforce social distancing. The fact that individuals may act outside of the rules that we set may represent our willingness to take away a privilege that they may have of using a golf course and so forth. But I will tell you that, I might hear an anecdote of somebody who was at a particular location at a particular time where they saw something was untoward, and then, an hour later, then when that same area was looked at, it wasn't the case. It's just a matter of the individuals who were there at a particular point in time. We've dealt with the golf issue more than once. I won't repeat myself from yesterday. The fact is that the major cluster for people playing golf is when you are in a golf cart. We have stated one person per golf cart. There's plenty of golf carts to go around. The weather's nice, but we are not at our peak level of golf at this stage of the game. And we don't know if we'll be able to accommodate people at the peak level, because at the peak level there will be clustering. But at this point, we're still in the winter season, and so there's still a smaller number. So we are trying to enforce this as best as we can. If there's an anecdote here, an anecdote there, I still think across the board that the people who are playing golf are following the rules. I am more concerned about the larger, more open places where people are not there to play a sport, but just in the natural social congregating, they congregate, more closely. And I think that happens in our open plaza parks like a Kensico Dam. I think that's the greater problem than the problem that we might find on a trailway or we might find at a golf course.
Okay. Next question from Mark as well. More generally, is there anything the county is doing to ticket or otherwise combat?
Well, again, I think the tougher enforcement is the second phase of how we handle this. This is something new for Americans, and I think we have to recognize that people don't necessarily know exactly what's appropriate social distancing. They might hear it on television, but there's quite a lot of folks that don't pay much attention to any of this. They're listening to entertainment, music, or whatever else they're into, and as they go out and they see the whole world is shut down, they go out and they connect and they do some version of partying together. And they don't appreciate necessarily what's at stake. And then it's more likely to be folks who are younger. In the social action years of their lives, they haven't clustered off with families, and they're still in that social connective stage. So I think our level of enforcement is to remind people. We do that in ways where we communicate to large groups. We have people walking through the crowds to remind them of what's appropriate. If we reach a point at which the majority of people are not following those rules on a continual basis, then we'll close the park. But I don't want to do that, and I don't think it's necessary. I don't think we need to ticket people yet because, again, I've had the same situation. I heard this past weekend about big clusters at Kensico Dam. I went there myself. I went to the Bronx River Reservation myself. I looked, and I didn't see examples of that at the particular time that I went. So I think it's an ebb and flow depending on how many people are someplace at a certain point in time.
Will the April 13th deadline for county property taxes be extended?
There's a discussion that we're going to have with the Board of Legislators that's going to review the issue. We expect to have it happen next week. It's important to understand that the deadline that's established is baked into law, and we would have to change the law in order to do that. But keep in mind that the state and the federal government, when they have a deadline date for you to file for your taxes, you're filing for a prior year, and the state and the federal government already have your tax money because they took it from you withholding every day. So neither the state nor the federal government is affected dramatically by the rolling back of a date. Your town and city government, your village government, your school district, and your county are affected when you hold off by some length of time the date of tax collection. So they're two really different situations, even though people think of them as being all the same, when you have to pay a tax directly or when you have to file your taxes, which often is you file taxes and you get a rebate at the federal and state level because they already have your money. In the cases of the local governments, we don't have your money until you pay your property taxes. There's a certain number of people, quite a lot, that pay through mortgage companies. And those mortgage companies are required by law to pay on a date regardless. And then if there's some difficulty, there's a difficulty between the individual and the mortgage company, and the state has set some laws in place that eliminate penalties for late payment. We're going to discuss what we can do. I suspect we will take some action, and certainly we'll announce the action as soon as we can. But we have to look at all the different ramifications of it. We know that people are having a tough time. I see it every day. I have plenty of friends that I talk to. I served in the private sector before I was in the public sector. I was in one of the industries that's most hardly hit now by this. So I'm not unaware of all of these things. I see it all the time. We have to make a decision that takes into account all of the different ramifications, and we will do that. We'll make sure that we're being fair to all people. But I will tell you, we must have our county health nurses out on the job. We must have our county police out on the job. We must have our county correction officers securing the jail and the correctional institutions. We must have people on the job treating sewerage. We cannot shut down those elements of county government. They're absolutely essential. And so we have to make sure that how we fund county government is done sensitive to the needs of the individual, but also sensitive to us performing functions that we're required to do by law and by practical reality. Well, we thank you very much for watching. We do not plan to have updates over the weekend. We will be back on Monday. If there is any breaking news, something of great significance, then we will reconnect so that you can have this information. If you're watching this on our Facebook page, check in on this Facebook page regularly. We'll try to have things that are of some interest as well as some importance. But it goes without saying, we're in an unusual time, a difficult time. Each of us have to look at the actions that we have to take individually as well as what governments are taking to try to deal with this. And again, I have confidence that we will get through this. Have a wonderful day. Be safe. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Thank you for your time.